In law school, there's a very common view that law is somehow set apart from the rest of politics and messy human affairs, and that we as lawyers are doing something else, somehow on a higher plane from regular politics. And I don't think that's true at all.
That's literally the one. So fun.
I was a first-year law student at Harvard right around the time that the fossil fuel divestment movement was taking off.
Hi, this is Ben Frana from Divest Harvard. I'm calling because there's a student protest for fossil fuel divestment happening right now.
There's a very active group of which I became part, trying to get the university to take their endowments out of funding fossil fuel companies. And they just did not want to even talk about it.
I need that door wide open as well as the stairs. If the fire department comes here, nobody can stay here.
Ultimately, we started a campaign of civil disobedience, doing blockades.
We're looking for an open and transparent dialogue with Harvard Corporation about divestment, so we can only speak with someone who has the power to negotiate on behalf of the corporation.
Our only request was for an open meeting to talk about these investments, and rather than have that meeting, they had a student arrested. Harvard's slogan has Veritas, truth in it, and I felt like the administration was hiding from the truth of what their investments are doing to the world and the futures of their students. Allison, Ted, and I all met through the fossil fuel divestment activism at Harvard. And when nothing else was working, we got together and started to talk about litigation.
University officials wouldn't meet with members of the campaign unless it was behind closed doors. And so it became clear to the campaign that the best way to get them to go on the record, in a public kind of way and engage with our arguments was to, file a lawsuit against them.
Good morning. I'm Justice Seifert. To my right is Justice Granger. Our first case is Harvard Climate Justice Coalition and Others versus Harvard Corporation and Others, 2015 P0905.
No judge wants their courtroom to just be used as, a stage for theater, but there's also a long and distinguished tradition in the law of using courtrooms and legal advocacy in sort of more of a First Amendment tradition, a way of allowing juries who are representatives of a community to really engage in a real way with some of the most pressing issues that are facing a community.
Under our second count, our tort count, we are representing the interests of future generations. Future generations, of course, are not able to come into court and represent their own interests. And in the special circumstances of climate change, where these injuries are far from speculative, they're severe and certain, we think that there must be some judicial flexibility to allow their interests to be heard before the court.
Allison, Ted, and I were pretty disillusioned by what we learned in law school about the existing options for environmental law to respond to climate change. And I think we all shared both that disillusionment and also inspiration from the courageous acts of protest that we were witnessing across the country and across the world, really. And we realized that that's where we wanted to put our law degrees and do our legal work.
We started CDP after we graduated. Most of our work so far has involved providing criminal defense representation and other legal support to climate activists.
I think addressing the climate crisis does give us an opportunity to think about what systems we do want to have and potentially remake some of the ones that aren't working that well. A good example is the necessity defense, because it asks the jury to consider not just did this person trespass, but is it acceptable to break the law, and what are the values that we care about most as a community and as a society.
And we have so little time to address the problem. I think that's, part of why Kelsey and Ted and I felt that we needed to start this organization right out of law school, even though everyone was telling us that that was a bad idea and, you know, you shouldn't hang your own shingle without having gotten any experience first. But we really had this sense that people in the climate movement needed lawyers who understood them.